Welcome to the CyberTalk podcast with your host, Mike Shelah, Director of Marketing and Business Development for Advantage Industries. When your company wants the best in IT and cybersecurity support, nobody does what Advantage does, the way they do it, for the price they offer. Contact us at getadvantage.com. And now, your host, Mike Shelah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to CyberTalk. I am very excited to be launching this brand new podcast where we are going to be talking with CIOs, CISOs, and other technology leaders in the industry to get their best practices and their strategies for tackling the constant deluge of IT and cyber threats facing businesses today. And I am honored to have as our very first guest, Mr. Sundhar Rajan. He is the CIO and CISO of Casepoint. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit about what Casepoint does. But Sundhar, thank you so much for being on CyberTalk today.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk here. I'm really excited about your new podcast, and good luck with how it's going to come along in the future. I'm honored that I'm the first one here, so thanks for that. Basically, Casepoint is a e-discovery company. We are a SaaS company. Pretty much the product was built for the cloud, and from day one we have been installing and putting this product in the cloud. We are in AWS, Azure. We have our own private infrastructure. Basically, we are an e-discovery company where people majority of the users are in the legal space. Now we are seeing people even outside the legal space who use our product. Basically, they upload data, and then they mine the data, they search through the data, they review the data, then they tag it, and then produce it into a legal system. So that's what we do. The one thing that stands apart from other SaaS companies to us is basically we deal with petabytes of data. we manage a ton of data. And compute is very important for us because we also have to process the data really fast. Not only just store it, we have to process it also fast. So we have both. Like, we process things faster, we store a ton of data, and obviously, since we deal with a lot of legal sensitive data, security is paramount. So basically, we are a SaaS solution which manages all these things. So
yeah. I thank you for that description. I love it. I was looking at your website, and I noticed that while the product did start in the legal industry, you are branching out now. So I saw government contracting and lots of other key target industries. I think what they all have in common is that up until this point, none of those industries had a specific compliance framework that they were expected to follow. So, doctors are supposed to follow HIPAA. Retailers are supposed to follow PCI. And while the legal industry in particular certainly wants to protect the intellectual property and other data that they collect, they've never had a framework that they were said, this is the one that you should follow. So I'm sure that's a conversation point that you have when implementing your infrastructure to serve your clients, right?
Correct. So basically, earlier days, like I would say like 10, 12 years back, a SOC 2, SOC 1 certification was like, wow, it's a nice to have. But I can tell you the way I'm looking at the market and the way things have progressed in the last 2-3 years, anybody wants to do a business where the data has to be sensitive, then the data is sensitive. Again, I will leave the end user and the procurement person to decide whether it's sensitive or not. But wherever there's sensitive data involved, people are mandating SOC 2, minimum a SOC 2 or a SOC 3. So if you're a company dealing with clients and you want to sell your product, I would highly recommend people to get a minimum a SOC 2 or a SOC 3 certification to start with. And it serves two purposes. Why I say that. It's not only telling them that, hey, I'm smart, we are smart enough, we are following all the right policies. That's why we got a SOC 2 or SOC 3. It also makes the convincing to the end client a little easier, right? You already have the certification, so they already know that you have all the right policies in place, so that the vendor risk assessment becomes very, very easier, right? For example, let's take for argument's sake, I'm saying this. Let's say I want to do a business with Coca-Cola, right? And they're coming across and saying, hey, Okay, you want to do business with Casepoint. Okay, let me send you this big vendor risk assessment document. Can you fill this out and come back to me, right? Why do you even get to that level, right? If you have a SOC 2 and SOC 3, the decision becomes a little easier for them to start with, right? So larger companies don't want to do that. So once you have a proper SOC 2, SOC 3, send the report to them. Many times the convincing becomes easier. That's a good starting point. But I would highly recommend people not to stop with the SOC 2 or SOC 3. Look at your business closely. Look at what kind of data is coming in. Look at what are the requirements the clients are asking you. So for example, Casepoint, right? When we started working with government agencies, FedRAMP was a big deal. So we had to do FedRAMP moderate. So we already became FedRAMP moderate. Now we are looking at other certifications also, right? If we want to deal with the state, right? State has something called state ramp. Should we look at state ramp so that it's easier? So many times the clients mandate some of the security certifications, but initially, even as a business, anybody who's starting a business, who wants to do with any business, even mid-sized to a large-sized companies, I would say do a SOC 2 or SOC 3. It becomes easier.
Now, that's fascinating. There's a lot for us to unpack there, so I'm going to go back through that just a little bit. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
In my line of work, we talk to businesses a lot, and perhaps this is about scale, so maybe that's part of the conversation we talked about. But when we approach prospective clients, we say, look, as a base model, you should really be following NIST 800-171 guidelines because everything else is built there. And as your business evolves, you follow different paths. So you mentioned FedRAMP. We brought a government contracting client on just 2 years ago now that approached us about doing CMMC. And we started going down that road for him. And about 6 months in, he said, now my partners, meaning the customers, are saying we need to do FedRAMP. We're like, okay, well, it's more complicated, but we've already laid the foundation, so we're well on our way. So now let's work on the things that make it unique to FedRAMP and to those other applications. And a couple of things that you probably weren't even where you touched on. One of my favorite things is that when a company follows a compliance framework and they really take it seriously, there is this nice side benefit of a dramatic increase in productivity. When your company is compliant, stuff breaks less. It's sort of the short version. There's no magic bullet to make things never break. But following a compliance framework really does help the productivity of the company, which helps also the bottom line revenue of the company. So when you're having your conversations with operations and finance and the other executives in the company, how much of that is part of the conversation that you're having?
So, Mike, great question. Actually, to be honest, right? It's two ways to look at this, right? You brought up the right point, right? Yes, stuff breaks less, things become even more predictable, and things are stable. But if you look at it from the other department's perspective, right? HR or finance, really, do they care about that? Their job role is different, right? You're adding more work for them, more paperwork for them. So basically, as a CIO or CISO, right? I always go through in two ways. The first thing I tell you is you're not doing this because Sundhar is saying you to do this. You're doing this because the framework is telling us to do this. Number one. Okay.
Love it.
I'll tell you, it makes it easy, right? I don't want to say that I'm the expert here, right? I mean, I have to really sell this properly inside the company. The way to say this, the framework dictates this. Many large companies are doing this. So this is not something special I'm asking you to do. That's the first thing I do to sell it. The second most important thing is if you want to win more businesses, and if you want our clients to trust us even more, you need to do this. So those are the two things I use to sell it. So it doesn't come as if I am trying to push this or IT is trying to push this. It always comes as the business need. It always comes as other large companies are doing it. We have to follow this. Simple.
Yeah, and you brought up an excellent point there. When I talk to businesses about going through the compliance process, regardless of the framework, I tell them, I am one piece of this process. You are also going to consider the impact on HR, because as you talked about, the documentation is really what distinguishes a lot of these frameworks, because the baseline, the 110 control requirements in this show up everywhere else.
Correct.
It's a baseline, but
Correct.
HR is going to craft things differently, or in addition to, once they're following SOC or once they're following FedRep or any of those compliance frameworks.
Correct.
And then you factor in, and since you work so closely with the legal industry, every business needs to have a legal strategic partner, at least on retainer, so that when things happen, they understand the legal impact. And then what I'll call the quattro here is having the right cyber insurance, because they're not all created equal. And I know one of your primary jobs is to review that document because it comes up for renewal every year or 2 years.
Every year it comes for renewal, and I am the one.
And it gets more sophisticated.
Yes, correct. And definitely helps there also, right? And the other thing, right, I really want to tell you about this compliance and security things, right? When it comes to security certifications and compliances, it's hard to implement. I totally get it. It is a lot of paperwork. I totally get it. But two things people have to remember. The most primary thing which I wanted to bring up here is give it some time. The first year of SOC will be a pain. The second year of SOC will become easier. Third year of SOC will be breeze. The reason I'm saying this is because the maturity increases slowly. If the problem here is the first year people look at it and they go halfway, they're like, what the heck is going on here? I want to drop off, right? So trust me on this. I was the same way. Oh God, how many controls? Oh God, how much paperwork, right? It's a maturity process. Give it a couple of years, it becomes easier. Have a team, have a dedicated team for compliances. I highly recommend people to have a dedicated team for compliance. May ensure that all the evidences are collected properly. And what happens from second year onwards is, let's say the HR person changes today. Today, Mike is the HR person. Now, James is the new HR person. Just you have to tell them, hey, the SOP is already defined. This is the last 2 years of evidences. You need the same thing again this year. So slowly, everybody will start rallying up. That's the first thing. Second thing, what happens is explaining the why. Many times when IT people go back and ask other people in finance or HR, they tend not to explain why you're asking it. If you explain the why properly, trust me on this, I think everybody will rally behind you. This is the same for any business, right? You explain the why to the team members, whether it's your team member or your other department member. If the why is explained clearly, everybody will rally. The why here is very, very simple. If I want to stay in the business, if I want to grow my business, I need all the security certifications. Done. That's it. It's not for me. It's for the business. That's it.
Yeah, and you touched on two things that I think a lot of people in a role like yours or very similar to yours have experienced. To do a compliance framework, if day one, let's look at it that way. It's a 9 to 12 month process just to get through the controls and the tools and the documentation and all of that. And then you pointed it out. What's next? So if you're being diligent, year 2 is a little easier. And then year 3 is a little easier. And I think a lot of people, particularly when you get down to smaller companies, is that they think, oh, well, I've done it. Now it's done. No, it's not done. What you've done is you've made year 2 easier and you've made year 3 easier.
Yes.
And the other thing that you said that I heard this at a cyber conference in Carroll County where I live in Maryland a couple weeks ago. A gentleman who does risk advisement for businesses, good friend of his is a CIO, came to him and said, my CFO won't give me any more budget for IT, and I have to implement these tools. And he very soundly said, you don't need more IT budget. You need cyber as a separate and distinct budget. And like you said, that could be building a team. That could be having a strategic partner.
Correct.
To outsource certain things that you don't have the time or the expertise to handle. So I love what you did there with those conversation points, because these are real things that are happening to other CIOs and other CISOs across the globe currently.
Correct. And many times the why is not been explained. That's what I see, Mike, is the issue. Once the why is clear to the business, I think they normally rally upon. And I'll also tell you, Mike, initially I made many people to be, I would say, I think it's a stronger word. They're disgruntled, I should say, like, what the heck is going on here? But But once a couple of years goes by, they understand the why very really well, and they mature the internal teams also. That means the finance team matures itself, HR matures itself, the client services team matures itself, and they like it. Then slowly they start understanding it. So time is the essence here. Just give it some time, and everything will come along. And I'll tell you one more thing. I want to really emphasize this. SOC 2 and SOC 3 is no longer a luxury. It's no longer nice to have. It is a must have. It's a must have.
About that,
I'll be honest with you. Or else there's no way you're going to convince anybody saying that you're running a very secure shop.
Yeah.
If you're in my business, SaaS business, please get a SOC 2 and SOC 3.
That's a fascinating observation, because I've had prospective clients come to me and say, "Oh, I want a pen test." And my first question is, why? Now, pen test, very useful tool.
Right.
Can go a lot of directions with that. Or they say, well, I want a vulnerability scan, or whatever, however you want to label it.
Yep.
And my experience has been that some outside force, one of their customers, a strategic initiative the company's taking, is now putting these rules in front of them, and they say, okay, well, let's figure out what's broken. So let's do a pen test, let's do a vulnerability scan, and start building from there. And that's why I love your recommendation. If you're in software as a service, start with SOC 2. Somebody has already taken the time to lay out everything you need to do.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Why not follow this blueprint? Why not follow this roadmap that is, it's while it's time consuming, it's concise.
Correct.
Here's point A, here's point B, and here's how you get there.
Correct.
Because you could take the data from a great pen test and go, okay, now what?
Yeah, I agree. Totally. That's where FedRAMP is even a little bit better. And I'm sure people who are going to listen on this, they will most probably agree with me. Where SOC 2 and SOC 3 are good in certain ways. FedRAMP takes it to the next level when it comes to something called continuous monitoring. FedRAMP mandates something called a continuous monitoring, which is even more mature than a SOC 2 and SOC 3. And literally, how many highs, how many lows, and how many mediums are there in your network every month has to be uploaded to a website called OMB Max, and the government keeps a track of everything for all the FedRAMP systems. It is pretty good.
Yeah.
So you nailed it. Pen test it's a good starting point, but how do you lay it out when it comes to SOC 2? It really helps. Really helps. It tells you, okay, how do you monitor it? How many days you have to fix the problem? So see, the good thing with SOC 2 and some of these controls are, the main thing is it gives you a timeline. Like, for example, let's say it is a product architect, and he says that, hey, I cannot make this change because you say it's a high vulnerability. But if you say the business is holding on to a SOC 2 and SOC 2 recommends this to be fixed within 60 to 90 days, now the argument becomes very simple as an IT guy. You can simply say, hey, we all agreed on this standard. We all agreed that we have to fix this in 90 days. Whether you fix it or you tell me it's an operational requirement. If it's an operational requirement, as a company, let's decide this high vulnerability has to stay longer than 120 days, and what are the risks for the company are. So it makes conversations even more easier, So the reason why I'm able to talk about all these things is because of, since we did all these things, I understand how to talk about this. So any IT people who are there who are listening to this, please consider this. It also makes your argument with your other departments, like a product architect or other software developers, a little easier, because now everybody rallies behind one single control, which everybody agreed to as a business.
Yeah, from a business case standpoint, I think you just nailed it right on the head, that by choosing a framework, any framework, now you've obviously put some thought into this, and you evolved, you were going for the higher level ones, but choosing a framework allows you to get everybody behind it. And then, as is so often the case, at times operations is going to disagree with you. At times finance is going to disagree with you. At times HR is going to disagree with you. And you can go back to, look, we vetted this. We all agree this is good for the company for a laundry list of reasons. So because of that, we're going to continue with this. So we can't get through an episode without talking about COVID and how virtualization has impacted businesses today. And I'm sure that your organization was probably already virtualized to a certain extent, but to have to radically go 90 or 95% virtual for at least a short period of time certainly presented some challenges and some interesting experiences for your organization. And, talk of whatever you're comfortable sharing with us during that experience for your team.
Definitely. Very high level. Casepoint has always been a remote working office for a long time. But the difference, I think Mike nailed it. We were 60% virtualized, maybe, where people are working from home. But suddenly we have to ramp up to 99 or 100% of the people working remotely. But it wasn't that big of a challenge because already we were ready for it with 60% of the people. So we were okay with that. But what I've noticed was initially the things we put together were okay, everybody can work remotely now. Then slowly people started realizing it's not going to be 6 months. It's going to be a year. Now it's going to be 2 years now, right? So the investments were, we continued to make some investments. So slowly things were, it took us, I would say, to be honest, 60 days to make sure everything is stabilized when it comes to connectivity, VPN licenses, everything, right? It took I'm sure everybody went through that. Suddenly everybody's buying licenses, everybody's trying to ramp up their remote connectivity. But after that, I think everything normalized. And we were fine. For a year, I thought that productivity was great. I didn't have any big productivity. When I say great, I didn't see any productivity loss, and I regularly checked in with other teams, and they were happy about it. What we miss slowly after 2 years, I'll tell you, I'm sure everybody might be having the same problem. I would love to hear from other podcasts to what they are thinking. We miss the water cooler moments, right? Some great ideas happens in a kitchen, in a cafeteria. Sometimes it happens during, or during the short breaks. Those things were slowly we started missing from last year. We realized that, hey, we could be a little bit more effective if at least we come into the office at least a couple of times a week or something. So slowly we are trying to bring back this hybrid schedule. I totally understand people are still not comfortable, but we're trying to bring it back. I'll be honest with you, we still miss the water cooler moments, but we're hoping it's going to come back. We're hoping that at least a couple of days a week we could meet. Other than that, COVID definitely put us. What we learned with COVID is, yes, we could scale this, we could do all these things, but sometimes security is also a worry when it comes to COVID. We made conscious decisions on some of our laptop and our connectivity configurations, like small nitty-gritties like clipboard access and all those things were an issue. But slowly, I think people understood it. They understood, okay, this is a workaround you have to follow. Security is paramount with us at Casepoint, so obviously, we have to put in some of the controls. They did not like it, but I think end of the day, I think slowly they come through. But one thing which I could never fix is water cooler moments, and great. We miss it. We hope it comes back, and I hope the people support the hybrid work model pretty soon. So.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of really great things there. Item number one is that when you were in the office, people still printed stuff out, and people might save things locally to their laptop because they didn't have to specifically collaborate virtually all the time.
Right.
And COVID forced our hand on that. It forced us to change some of those regular routines that we were doing. And then the other item around the water cooler moments, collaboration radically changed. And whether you are in HR or you are in sales or you are in IT, being able to just chat with your peers, your colleagues, the people that work for you, the people that you work for, it just a stop by moment, not a planned meeting, not, I'm taking 15 minutes to talk to you today, but you pass by, you see that your boss's door is open and you say, hey, I had a question. I had this thought. That you have to be much more intentional about achieving those items. I know one of the things my company did was we started having virtual happy hours on Friday afternoons just to try and get some of that. I pinged my principal design engineer last Thursday afternoon. I said, I haven't seen you all day. What are you doing? Not a what are you doing, but hey, I have not talked to you today. How is that possible? And so you having those moments where you can interact, and sure, you're talking about work, but maybe you're just asking how'd your son's baseball game go? How'd your daughter do with her performance on that exam you were telling me about? just being able to have the human connectivity, because that is the glue that makes your department successful.
Definitely, 100%. I think you nailed it, Mike. That's the most important thing. And the second thing is, Mike, whether you believe it or not, we suck up other people's energy. Positive. You can take it in the positive way or negative way. I think the better word to say is I derive more energy when I start talking to other people. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a better way to put it. And that is something, doing virtual. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know why. So maybe that's me. That's how I'm wired, probably. So.
Well, you make an excellent point. One of the things that came out of COVID is that there's a certain segment of our employees that thrive in this environment.
Correct.
And there is a certain segment of our employees that don't. That they perform 2-3 times better in the office. And then there is that group in the middle that can kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But until we were forced to do this,
correct,
we weren't able to identify. And now that we're 2 years removed from it, we can start to be more flexible with those requirements, because every company has that department leader that says, well, everybody must be in the office at 8 a.m. and must stay till 5 p.m. And some people go, yes, structure. I love it. Thank God. And other people go, oh my, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And in between. So I think that's a lot that has come out of this. So Sundhar, I have truly appreciated this conversation today, and I'm going to ask you for your last thought, and let's frame it this way. You're speaking to a CIO from a completely different industry, so they're not in software, but they are your peer in that they're dealing with many of the challenges that you face. If you're going to give one piece of advice to your fellow technology and cyber leaders that we haven't gotten to today, where would you start?
Oh wow, that's a tough one, because I don't think I'm that great to give advices, but definitely some piece of information probably I can share. The one thing for success, right? Obviously, security is paramount. I'm going to say two things. When it comes to security, one simple advice is consider each and every laptop as an endpoint in your network. Don't always think only data center is your network. Please consider each and every laptop as your network. I think it changes your perspective completely when you do that. That's one thing on security. One thing on personality and how to get things done and everything, right? Explain the why. That's been my success mantra. Many times, many people fail to explain the why clearly. When I say clearly, is don't make it too. I would say don't make it too technical or something. Explain the why in a simple term so that people can rally behind you. The third thing I would say is keep innovating, keep hustling. The day you're going to stop innovating, and if you stop hustling around, I think something big is going to break. That's my thing. For example, what is the famous thing? Don't upgrade because nothing is broken. Please don't do that. Keep hustling. Firmware upgrades are important. Upgrades are important. I know things are working, but still upgrades are important. You see, it might not even give you the greatest features, but it'll stop things from breaking. That's what I feel. So keep hustling, keep innovating. Don't stop. I think that gets you in the right direction most of the time.
I love the keep innovating, because the technology industry is constantly innovating. I know you know this, but I got into this business in 1999, and the hockey stick effect that I've seen over the last 5 years. So the technology's been on a trend upwards anyway, but there really seems to have been a hockey stick effect over the last 5 years with virtualization and the rise in cybersecurity, and frankly, the hackers are approaching this like a business now. So that means that we as technology professionals have to approach it as a business as well.
Yep, agree. Well said, Mike.
Well, Sundhar, thank you so much for being on the debut episode of CyberTalk today. And to all of our listening and viewing audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out Casepoint, because they just have a phenomenal tool out there for businesses. Certainly, if you're in the legal field, it's a great place to be. But take a look at their website and all of the diverse industries that they help and support. My name is Mike Shelah, Director of Marketing and Business Development with Advantage Industries, and thank you for listening to CyberTalk.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.